zu ihm, und wenn sie sich alle ärgerten, so wollte ich doch mich nicht ärgern.
All right, it's Hank, your pajama scholar. It would appear that we have a green light, and this is your AGR at 11:10. And today we will be discussing a real-life event, a few that caused such irritation and vexation. I find some things that irritate me to be greatly inspiring. And it seems like I've got little bits of interruption in the stream. Check something real quick about the stream quality. I'm dropping up and down. All right. So I apologize for that. But the title of today's episode is Afflicted with the Malady of Thought. And what I'm going to be exploring is some ideas from John Stuart Mill on liberty, specifically on liberty of thought and discussion. Well, it won't be so dry. It's just not a boring philosophical lesson. It's gonna, well, with enough alcohol, and there's only been a tiny bit so far, I'm sure that we can inspire some sort of passion out of this piece. Now, as usual, I had outlined a couple of things, a couple of points that I wanted to hit. And then I reached a point where I realized that I had to expand on an idea that was reflective of a very recent experience. That's just how philosophy tends to be. You know, you'll attach to a point and then you'll want to elucidate and go on and on and on to be specific about that point. So, I wanted to start with the jurisdiction of the true judge, because I had been recently inspired to consider law and what is lawful by something that was mentioned by another YouTuber that I very much enjoy his conversations. And he said something like, when the law returns, when the courts return, then I will be greatly pleased to sue these people as yet I feel no need to name either party, for the damages that they have caused. And I was thinking to myself, well, if we are in a position where we are without true rule of law, then we are already in a condition of war. And I went on to describe the connection or continuity between truth and justice that would manifest authority to give law substance. But this is something that John Stuart Mill wrote about on, or of the liberty of thought and discussion, because we are speaking most specifically about free speech, but I'm also speaking about freedom of action, freedom of religion. I'm talking about the First Amendment for the most part. And all those Enlightenment ideas religious ideas, even when they're examined in the true sense, ideas about actualization and ideas about freedom that led us to where we are, that led to the creation of the Constitution, and forgetting these principles or not understanding these principles or not placing value on philosophy or the fundamentals that have crafted and created Western society, that is essentially the foundation that crumbles beneath us. That and the brainwashing, but I gave up those experiments years ago. I was warned off, anyway, by, let's just say, benevolent forces far more powerful than mine for tinkering around with super weapons. I was taught a very, very serious lesson. And, well, once you understand that type of thing, you just don't ever want to see it used as a weapon or for nefarious purposes whatsoever, as you realize how dangerous it is. It's like having a grandmaster deliver you a supreme beatdown and it not cost you your life. So that's just what happens when you go tinkering around with super weapons. But that's a whole nother discussion for a day that we're not going to have, or a discussion we're not going to have on any day. All right. Now, the jurisdiction of the true judge, and I've tried to boil this down into a couple of points. A hurtful action against others is a prima facie case for punishing him by law, or, essentially, in the absence of law, general disappropriation, or clumsy tongue. Forgive me. Disapprobation. And believe it or not, when I drink more, I can speak languages more easily. When you spend most of your time in silence and in reading, it's sometimes difficult to pronounce words, especially when well, it was an old saying my grandfather used to say. It was actually the first saying I ever used when I wanted a taste of beer. I was a young guy on a fishing boat, and it was the end of a hot day, and I said, "Can I just get a little something to wet the whistle?" I had never tasted beer before in my entire life. "Can I get a little something to wet the whistle?" I said, and they had found that so amusing that they gave me a bush beer, and I wasn't even a man yet. And I took one sip of that thing, and I was so fucking disgusted with it, I couldn't possibly imagine why any human being would want to imbibe such a filthy, disgusting thing. But as I've grown older, well, to wet the whistle is to acquire a new taste. Anyway, by law or general disapprobation. Okay, hurtful action against others is a prima facie case for punishing him by law or general disapprobation. Second part of that, for the jurisdiction of the true judge, as I would see a true judge to be, to perform acts of individual beneficence, such as saving a fellow creature's life, or to interpose to protect the defenseless against ill usage. Those I find to be within the authority of a true judge. And so I moved on a little bit to try and understand what the paragon, the epitome of a true judge, acting in justice, acting in accord. In my mind, from a practical standpoint, I consider that one of the most difficult tasks that could be assigned to any man on earth would be to bear the responsibility to judge another. Because, in my belief, there is a karmic balance. This is why judges are expected to be slow, intelligent, thoughtful in their deliberations, even erring on the side of caution. To err, like I prefer the expression, it's better to let 9 guilty men go than to hang 1 innocent man. I do believe that that's the providence jurisdiction of the judge. A very, very difficult task. One that I would not want, because to misappropriate that authority and to misjudge a situation and to assign a penalty, because that is specifically without, if you're to build a society, you're emulating in some aspects what belongs to God. To judge another man belongs to God. And that, to assume authority that belongs to God and to judge man, I understand that it is necessary for the organization of society, but I would be extremely I believe I would be underqualified, 1. 2, I would be very much concerned with my own spiritual health, because I know if I was to make a mistake, then that would come back on me at least in 3s, in this life or the next. So it's a tremendous responsibility to be a true judge. And this is the essence of where the authority of a true judge comes from. This is why a true judge is so greatly respected. The true judge is not really assuming any danger from the criminals as he stands in court with his bailiff or anything. He's not assuming that danger. He's assuming the danger of when it comes time for the judge to be judged, and any mistakes are made, are balanced in 3s. It is a very precarious position to be in, even if you are to do your absolute best. That mistake, it's very, from a spiritual philosophical understanding, it's a very, very, very difficult concept for me to grapple with, and a responsibility I would not want to have to consider part of my portfolio of action. A more, in my philosophical sense, well, whatever needs to be handled justly can be handled justly. Okay. So, as I explored this a little bit more, a person may cause evil to others by not only his actions, but by his inactions. And then either case, that person is justly accountable for the injury. And here's where I'm going to expand on why and when and how I got so pissed off. Because I'm talking about, here I've already spoken about a true judge and the authority that comes, that is assigned, appreciated, respected of a true judge, and where their authority is derived through responsibility, dedication, a commitment to the truth and to the law. And then for the reasons that they would do it, to save another creature's life, or to interpose, to protect the defenseless against ill usage. Okay. So, the other night, I was at a store, a grocery store, in fact. And like many other places in the world, they've taped up these things. They've made these little 6-foot markers on the ground and arrows from which way you can walk up and down the aisle. Truly ridiculous. Especially given the preponderance of evidence for anybody that wants to look and to see that if this supposed reason for social distancing is valid, it would only take a tiny bit of research. And the preponderance of evidence is out there in a binder that I could print that would at least be 6 inches thick. But I'm going to come to the point of authority. Because nothing pisses me off more than a Nazi. I fucking hate Nazis. I hate Nazi collaborators. I hate a fucking go along to get along with a Vichy government motherfucker that does not appreciate what the value of freedom is or what it costs or the taxes that have been paid in blood for you to have it. So anybody that pulls that Nazi shit on me is gonna fucking piss me off to the maximum. So in my mind, you're either an American, a Nazi, one of the, essentially, the collaborators of a Nazi government or Nazi idea, or you're simply a non-actor in a Vichy government. Okay. And so I'm going to give you an example of what I would call one of those little Stasi rats. And this is the second time I've run across one of these little Stasi rats. And what I do is I take note of these little Stasi rats and I run them the fuck off. But I'm patient about it, but I absolutely hate a Nazi because I love freedom so much, and I'm not giving it up. So, I'm at the store, and there's the cashier, and she motions for me as there's these lines to step back on this 6-foot social distancing line. And I'm in the mood, no, fuck you. I refuse. Number 1, you don't have the authority. Number 2, whatever authority you imagine to have is predicated on a lie and bullshit, and you are perpetrating lies and bullshit that is essentially harming our population and conditioning them to bow down to a Vichy government or something that does not respect liberty and freedom. You are betraying your principles, and there has been a vast amount of material that has been delivered to you for you to even investigate, even slightly, to have an understanding that many epidemiologists and pathologists have already revealed this to be a psychological operation. So even with a minimum amount of effort, you could grant yourself some authority, but no, the authority here to this woman at this time, as she worked the cashier at a checkout line, was to tell me to step back over this line. Now, I am a sovereign individual. She has no authority here. What I am doing is not illegal. No mandate, no writ, no scribble by anyone at all, especially those predicated on lies, bears any merit. So there is no authority here that exists in the sense of justice. So, I refuse. But I don't refuse as in like, fuck you, lady, I'm going to stand right here. It's just, no, I'm ignoring you. I am ignoring your ignorance. I am ignoring your command. I do not recognize your authority. Your authority is illegitimate. Now, her origin of authority as an issuance to this command, a cashier, to a man that is willing to purchase goods at a business, she derives her authority from a place, and I will get on to where that place is. Well, to force the sovereign stand of peace, which is where I was and where I keep myself, in non-violent, non-movement, non-compliance, and I consider it to movement by command of will, or her command of will, against my own sovereign will. It's afflicted against my own choice of standing. Now, she has all the choices and freedoms in the world. If she is so seriously concerned about catching a disease, then she can go the fuck home and stay there. Instead, she chose to stand there at her work. So either it is in a position where she is either is a slave and is willing to risk disease, or she does not truly believe that it is a threat, but yet somehow she still believes it is within her authority to command a man that peacefully does not move and does not respond and tell him where the fuck to stand and where the fuck to go. Well, sorry. Now, it was an unlawful command. We all know this. It's an unlawful command. And it was issued from a state of ignorance, her state of ignorance, and here is what really pissed me off, a willfully implied threat or force against my person and body of freedom. And I'm going to tell you how this chain works. In her mind, I could clearly see, it is not a leap of logic. I read people pretty well on most occasions. To escalate force against peaceful non-compliance when confronted by an unlawful command issued from a standing, lacking authority of any real kind, and in this I mean of any real kind, it was not natural authority. Natural authority would be where she was big enough to beat my ass. Now, I have been in conditions where it has not necessarily been lawful or right, but, you know, back when I was running around with a youngin', as a youngin', you know, hanging with the dudes with the tattoos, you know, flames tattooed to the side of their head. Well, there are just certain codes that you observe. Even though you have freedom of speech, you're not going to insult him because he's twice the size of you and likes to beat the shit out of people just on fucking general principle. That would be natural authority. So that's why you're not going to find me giving him the finger in his own bar. I did it one time totally by accident, and I was excused for it for the generosity and relationship that we had established previously, but somebody else got the fucking piss beat out of him that night. I was lucky. I understood that I was lucky. I understood the code, and through a quick oversight, well, it could have cost me a fucking severe ass whooping. So, but that's not lawful, that's not legal, that's not standing in authority of natural authority. Okay. Second generation where I would respect authority would be to be informed, to have observed or appreciably, to observe this in action, this virus thing, to appreciably be educated, to be intellectually honest, to be researched. You would command some authority in my mind, and I would obey that authority because I respect people that know what the fuck they're talking about and are legitimately trying to protect you and other people. This authority comes from the understanding of legitimate experience. But this authority that she wielded and it was clearly defined in my mind that the origination of her command would be carried out with the authority of escalating force. Okay? And a chain of this would have gone as follows. I would have not stepped back across that line. So she would have summoned her authority figure, because her authority figure commands her, owns her job, so on and so forth. So she's going to summon the next level of authority figure, who will come over and politely, I assume, but forcefully, instruct me to observe this illegitimate, illegal custom in a public place. Now, what typically happens in a situation like this is other authority figures will follow the authority figure that was summoned, so now they create a crowd or a circle around you to give themselves a greater pretense of authority that has no origination in justice, in law, in common sense, in education, observation, or anything of the kind. They have simply begun to build a gang predicated on chains of authority. Now, we know that authority figure number one that was summoned could not bring force against me. So, if I continued to refuse to comply, and this is entirely fucking bullshit, crazy nonsense to me, because by that time, I could have just bought my shit and been on my fucking way. Which is precisely what I did. That was the way I chose to handle it. But it's not that I haven't given it some serious fucking thought. So what would happen to that next chain in authority? Well, they would, probably attempt a direct dismissal under the pretense of two different types of things. One would either be disturbing the peace, or the second would be trespass, which neither one would be true or legitimate. It would be the bullshit that they would blow up your ass, the sunshine they would blow up your ass. Number one, it's not a trespass. You're there on business in a public area. Number two, the authority that's derived from this lie or this psyop is illegitimate and unconstitutional. Number four, you're not disturbing the peace because you did not initiate this conflict. You stood there and said nothing. The conflict was initiated by the person that commanded you to do something that you decided in your own self-sovereignty not to do peacefully. Standing and not moving is not a crime. See, with these Stasi motherfuckers, everything is a crime. And the only way that they carry out their authority is with escalating usage of force. So what would be the next step in that chain? They would summon the authorization of enforcement, or summon the authorization of the enforcement arm, generally lawfully, endowed with social power that permits the use of force against body or liberty, because criminals need to be stopped from committing crimes. And there's a certain class of enforcers, generally we call them police officers, an officer of the court, to arbitrate disputes on the street if at all possible, and if necessary, apprehend a criminal by force to be brought before the magistrate and then the judge. So, that lady wanted that level of use of force against me, which is a threat early on in the origination implied of either force, bodily force against me, bodily or to steal away my liberty, to challenge my liberty by taking away my freedom. So, with my refusal to disobey her command, she is willing to escalate to the point where she believes that the people that are tasked with dealing with criminals would come out and use bodily force against me, or potentially challenge my freedom with incarceration. Now that is a direct threat. That is a threat to me. So, in essence, and this is a bit of a reiteration, the intent could have been understood to be an attack via threat against my body or liberty by exercising my right of freedom of movement within a public domain, legally and lawfully. Now, I'm going to show you, demonstrate the opposite side of this coin, to skip the bullshit. If I was to reach over that counter, grab her by the hair, and smash her face into the cash register, I would have skipped that chain. She would have commanded, and I could have, by natural law, reciprocated with the same degree of force that she intended to have applied against me, yet she intends to use proxy and manipulation, where I would have just reached across the counter, grabbed her by the hair, and smashed her face into the cash register. That's the same part and parcel. We're talking equality in the use of force, and both in both respects are unlawful. I'm a lawful person, so I didn't reach across the counter, bash your face into the cash register, and walk off. Is it within my ability to do so? Yes. Is it something that now, as a man of Christ, that I want to do to commit violence against people? Absolutely not. It would make me a hypocrite. I would not be in defense of liberty. I have an expectation for others to understand and appreciate liberty, and this is to not apply force against any other person by any method or means of coercion. So, now I'm going to reiterate just with the writing here. Now, if I were to reach over to the counter and bash her head into the register, would that not be an equal, though more expeditious use of the force that was implied to be used against me? One method of unlawful implied force without even pretense of understandable, recognizable authority by using proxies to execute a command against my sovereign, peaceful standing, or an immediate counterattack of equal methods of force implied to be used against me. So when we as a society find ourselves in a position where there is no equal application of justice and no understanding of the principles of what freedom is, and you have little Stasi motherfuckers running around that think that they can rat you out until they reach somebody or have a group around you strong enough to lift you off your feet and take you away for not, because to these motherfuckers everything's a crime, because they don't understand freedom. They don't understand the law. They don't understand their own principles. So I look at these people in many instances, like I say, either as a useful idiot, one of those good Germans that looked the other way until bombs were dropping on Dresden and the Russians were coming in and raping the women by the thousands. Or I look at it as a collaborator, or I look at you as a full-fledged Nazi. Anytime that you are using force without the application of the spirit of the law, and I'm not talking about codification or writ, I am talking about the spirit of the law, and for this you'll have to go back to Montesquieu. Now I could go on a few more points, and maybe I will later, but my tongue is a little dry, and I've got a lot of Greek to study today, and I think that's just to illustrate a point. And there are some brilliant things in here by Mill when we're to talk about Christianity, which actually is one piece that I think I will go over before I retire on this piece. Also, the sacrifice of philosophers and others, and the 99 and 100 of what called educated men in condition. There's a lot wonderful things to find here, so I highly suggest that you read it. Okay, now this is to Christianity. Okay, all Christians believe that the blessed are the poor and those who are ill-used by the world, that it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. That they should judge not, lest they be judged. That they should not swear at all. That they should swear not at all. That they should love thy neighbor as themselves. That if one take their cloak, they should give him their coat also. that they should take no thought for the morrow, for that if they would be perfect, they would sell all that they have and give it to the poor. They are not insincere when they say that they believe these things. They do believe them, as people believe what they have always heard lauded and never discussed. And we go on, and he goes on, and he actually speaks quite a bit to atheism. It's very interesting, the exploration that he does within atheism and Christianity. He is a bit critical of Christianity, as anybody should be. To be a true Christian is spiritually powerful thing, and as I believe I spoke on the last AGR about the woeful abuse of language, or the woeful abuse of words, but I believe at that time we were examining Locke. But there's plenty more to go on to. I'm going to wet the whistle a little bit, practice my Greek, and it's been Hank. I'll catch you guys on the flip side.